So this one was 26 bucks on Amazon, and it's the Artistro brand. It says Artistro Professional Palette, so this ought to be good, because are we all professionals? I don't think so, but it comes with a swatch sheet. It's a nice watercolor swatch sheet with all the names and like a little light fastness, like 1 star is limited, 2 stars normal, 3 stars strong, 4 stars extra strong. And covering, if it's a dark circle, it's very opaque, half circle, semi-opaque, and a clear circle, not colored in circle, is transparent. So it kind of gives you a map over what the colors will be like once they dry. So let's take a look at the colors. So it's got this nice like sheet, kind of a plastic sheet. And it's got this nice, they're very large wells of color. Now you look at it and it kind of looks like black, 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 black. So this ought to be fun to try to figure out what colors like are what. So I thought I'll start putting together the Swatch color palette so we can test it out together and see how it works. So I'm going to spritz them to kind of wake everybody up for their first time out. It's their first time in public. And some of them look like they've got like some metallic to them. So we'll see. I mean, my heart does lie with this one. I just adore this palette. So we shall see. Now, that being said, this is kind of an oddly large box. So you're not going to really be able to see me pull the colors out. Let me see if I move over here. Yeah, it's going to be a little tough, but there's one strip of color missing over there. But we'll do the best we can. So let's start with this orange. So I like to kind of start out light or dark and then bring it into lighter with a lot more water to see how it turns into. And I'm not going to be super careful about making sure every edge is colored in. All right, so this is turquoise. And I'm doing like a wet on dry to kind of not, flood the entire thing. And I'm just going to bring in some water. That's a pretty color. And pick up some of that extra water. Well, that's pretty. Turquoise. All right, so leaf green. That's nice light green. What's this one? Blue green. So I do about half of the color box with pigment, and the other half I fill with water coming from the opposite side, and then it that water drags the pigment in so it lightens it up as it goes. So you can see it goes from like super saturated to what it looks like watered down. I just find that helpful when I'm working on color palettes. Now white is obviously going to be its own little character because that is completely opaque, can't see through it. I hardly ever use white watercolor paint, and I think it's because my college professor only allowed us to have like the very basic color. Like he didn't even want us to have black. We had to mix our own. So he was like no joke. Lou Lorenzen, God rest his soul. He was wonderful. So I think I still have him in the back of my head all these years later from 1995 saying you don't need white. He's a big Italian guy. You don't need white to make highlights. Okay. All right, so that one was burnt umber. All right, so now, oops. Here is quinacridone violet. Whoa. That's a nice purple, like a red purple. I have a Daniel Smith of that color that is so pretty and I love it. So this is kind of nice having it in this set. Phthalo turquoise. All right, come on. Phthalo turquoise. That's a nice color too. Well, so far I really like the colors on this palette. And for the, 26 bucks, that's not bad. That's not a bad price for a nice set of colors. All right, deep golden yellow. So this kind of looks a little orange to me. Not really very yellow. So I'm glad that I'm doing this color palette because it's going to help me figure out like which colors don't necessarily match. Oh goodness, I smudged. Which colors don't necessarily match the names that I'm used to, but permanent red. All right, so it's kind of like a bricky red. It's always important to make these color swatches because you never know what the final color is going to be based on, it's like when you look at a computer and people's brightnesses are different and you never know what, the monitor could be crummy, but having a swatch of the colors in the palette will help you determine, all right, that's too red of a red for me to use for whatever I'm doing. I got to find a different color in my palette. It's very helpful. And I know a lot of folks think it's a waste of time or it's boring or, what it can be. I don't necessarily think it is. I like doing it. I find it relaxing and slows me down, and I find making swatches enjoyable. But that's me, and I'm not everybody. So, but I do think it's a good thing to have when you have any sort of a color art supply, to know what the colors are going to end up looking like. Because a lot of times, like if they send you a pre-done, like a pre-printed watercolor palette, the colors that are on the printable aren't necessarily close to the colors that are in the paint, because because people see colors differently. All right, so that was Peak Green. This is French Ultramarine. So I don't know, I don't mean to preach, but that is, I find it important for my art practice to have a color swatch sheet. Well, that's pretty. All right, French Ultramarine. I'm sorry you can't see. I pull the camera up, but I just broke my camera. So if I touch it, it's going to go flying, and I don't want to do that. All right, so deep black. All right, so there's our black. You know, the more water you add, the lighter the color is going to be. So you could use this as a really dark, deep black, or add some water, and it turns into more of a gray. That's the other thing that Big Lou never let us do, is use shadows were never gray. You had to mix your own shadow color, and it had to be out of the color that you were using, and it's opposite on the color wheel. So I learned a lot from that guy. I'm going to actually make that a little bit darker. All right, sepia is next. Nice brown. So a little less of a reddish brown than the burnt umber. Quinacridone magenta. Pretty. It's a nice pinky. A little less purpley than the Quin Violet. Add a little more darker color down this end. All right, Brilliant Blue. So May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And doing something like this helps my mental health. This is yellow ochre. I think just using, you know, repetitive motions, repetitive techniques, it calms me down. It makes me feel more like I've got, you know, a little more control, and it de-stresses me. So art is very good for your mental health. All right, so now we got magenta. It's similar to this Quin magenta. Pretty. Deep olive green. Now see, that doesn't look very deep olive to me. I have another color in my head for olive green, but this is what this particular palette calls deep olive green. So that's why Again, I find it better for me to make these palettes, so I know this is more, to me, this is more of a, like a leaf, kind of a leaf green than a deep olive green, but. All right, ultramarine. That's a definite ultramarine blue. Make this side a little bit darker just so I can see the difference. Lunar blue. That almost is like a Payne's gray. I don't even know if they have a Payne. Oh, they do have a Payne's gray, so we'll see. Lunar blue. Well, we'll see what they have for a Payne's gray. And the difference, it might be a little bluer or something. I'm going to make that a little darker over here. That's kind of nice. All right, raw umber. So that's a little more of a greeny blue, greeny brown. And see, that's where like I would mix with another green to make a olive green. That to me, not olive green. Definitely not deep olive green. All right, now just purple. All right, this purple looks awfully red in the palette. So this is definitely more of a violety purple, not a deep purple that I have in my head what purple looks like. So, note to self, make sure when I'm mixing this palette up I add some blue to make it a little bit more of a deeper purple. All right, manganese blue. Oops, I gotta clean that brush off. Manganese blue. So that's pretty opaque. And see how like it tells you this will be really opaque, this will be really opaque. This, not so much. Based on the little what do they call that, a map key? Your symbols that you can go off of on a map. I think that's like the key. All right, so that is their version of manganese blue. All right, so deep yellow. Deep yellow. Yeah, that's a deep yellow to me. That to me would be deep orange yellow. This would be a deep golden yellow to me. Guess, you know, different when you name the paints. You've got, you know, whoever thinks it's looks the most like a deep golden whatever, that's what they go with. But there's, you know, there's no, they're not wrong just because I see it a little differently. All right, deep carmine, so that's like a reddish. It's like a reddish pinkish. Pretty. Make this side a little bit darker. The cheat sheet is coming together. I'm just kind of drying off my brush and pulling up the extra watery bottoms so it doesn't turn into too much of a bloom like up here, which is fine, but, or like this one, that's kind of a cool one. All right, deep green. This looks like black in the palette. That is a deep green. It's a nice, like a foresty green. All right, Prussian blue. Where are you, Prussian blue? I used to love Prussian blue. Still do. It's like a cerulean. Very pretty. Pretty, pretty, pretty. All right, metallic gold. What do we got here? Metallic gold. Ooh, hey. That's a pretty color. It'd be nice to add some splotches. I'm not gonna fade this one out. Very pretty and very opaque or transparent. Transparent, not opaque. All right, Payne's Gray. Moment of truth. I'm looking at that like that's my Payne's Gray, that lunar blue. Ooh, this is a very dark. Let's see. So it's similar to this. It's got a little bit more of a bluer hue. We'll see when it dries what we got, but similar. All right, cerise. That is a pink. That's a nice pinky color. I like that color. Permanent blue. It's like a navy. I keep kind of getting my droplets on my card here, and I don't want it to ooze onto the rest of another color. All right, brilliant yellow. That is a brilliant yellow. What a nice sunshiny yellow that is. All right, brilliant red. So this is like a vermilion color. It's almost reddish orange. So the one thing that I have about this kit that I'm a little, I didn't think about. I shouldn't say I'm unhappy about, because I should have thought of it before I bought it, but I'm a big palette mixer, like on the tops of palettes, and this one is a cardboard box, so you can obviously you can't mix your colors on top of the box, so I'm going to have to get a white ceramic plate to mix my colors on, which I have a couple, so that'll be no big deal, but just one more thing to carry around. So just a thought. All right, so this is Viridian. Pretty. nice green. All right, phthalo blue is the last one on this row. So that's a nice bluish color. It's similar to the permanent blue. That's a little grayer. All right, metallic copper. I'm going to do this one the same way I did the gold, and I'm going to give it a nice non-gradient coloring in, because we know that's completely transparent. I like to use these metallic colors to splatter. All right, gray. Let's see what they think for gray. Well, it's pretty gray. I don't know why you wouldn't just water down your black, Lulurenzen, but let's get that a little darker over here. All right, magnesium brown. It's kind of a gross name. So that's like a, kind of like an ochre, less of a yellow, but it looks very similar. A little bit less yellowy than a yellow ochre. And my yellow ochre has completely bloomed out, so as has my peak green. See, when you have too much water and the outsides dry faster than the insides, that's when you get a bloom, which is not a big deal. But sometimes you can kind of reactivate and clean it up a little bit if you don't want that in your, in your painting. I happen to think they're kind of cool looking, like that's kind of neat looking, but whatever. All right, so light violet. Let's see what this one, now see, that's to me a nice purpley color. So this one I would just, it's a nice color, but I would definitely add a little more blue to it to kind of purple it out for what I have in my mind as purple. That's like a red violet to me. Lemon yellow. Yellow and bright yellow or brilliant yellow and lemon yellow, they always kind of look this same across any palette. That's kind of a tough one to not have be a consistent color. All right, here's vermilion. So they're vermilion. Now I look at that as vermilion. This palette calls this vermilion, which this to me is more of like a terracotta color. Less of a red, more of a orangish brown. Cobalt turquoise. We're in the home stretch now. Pretty. All right, this ought to be good. Light olive green. So this is deep olive green. This is light olive green. Look at the palette color. See how dark it is? So I think we might have a mix-up in color naming because this to me is a lot deeper than the deep olive green, but is definitely more of an olive green than that. Metallic silver. So I'm going to do that the same way I did the other metallic ones. I'm just going to make a nice consistent color across the entire box, since that is a very transparent All right, rose madder. Now, rose madder, what I know as rose madder is like a dusty mauve color. This one has it as in like a Caucasian flesh tone, which it's like more of a peach color. I wouldn't have thought this was rose madder, but okay. And brown ochre. All right, so this is more to me like an umber, more like the raw umber, not the burnt umber. All right, last but not least, violet. That's definitely a nice violet. But see, like that's a nice blue violet. So I would have named it blue violet. I guess, you know what, I go back to like the Crayola colors when I was a kid, and I think back to those names. Those are the ones that made the most sense to me. You know, like sky blue, brilliant blue. All right, so that's a pretty good array of colors. You know, there's nothing in here that's like a bright pink or like a opera pink, so that would be something I would want to add.
Here's what I found.
I'm not talking to you. There's not really a big well, these I guess would be orange, even though that says orange, that says deep golden yellow. So I would tend to call those orange. I also think that if the palette was laid out a little differently, where the colors that were similar, meaning like orange, deep golden yellow, yellow ochre, vermilion, rose madder, I think if those were in a closer line, that might work better for my brain. But you know, it's fine. It's good for what I paid for it, and I'm happy with the array of colors. I'm a little confused on these two that are Lunar Blue and Payne's Gray. I always thought Lunar Blue was a little more blue, kind of like the Payne's Gray, but I also thought it was more like, I don't even know what the word is. I can't think of it, but it looks a little bit more textured. So, and the Quin Violet and the Quin Magenta, those are very similar, and I think I should probably darken this one up a little bit, because that looks very similar to from the left side to the right side. So maybe that'll help me make a little more sense. But I think for what, you know, for the 26 bucks I paid for it, I'm pretty happy with it. I think I definitely need a mixing tray or some sort of a palette to be able to mix my colors, because I like to be able to do that, because that's the other thing my college professor said, never work directly out of the palette, always mix. So I always have that in the back of my head. But yeah, I think it's worth it to, you know, for the 26 bucks, if you are looking for a new palette, or, you know, you want to try something new and that isn't, you know, like a crummier version, you just got to watch your naming conventions, because that definitely, the deep olive and the light olive, that's kind of a failure in naming to me. Just to me. That's how my head works. But all right, so that's what we have. So I hope that you got a little something from it. And if you're into looking for this palette, I'll put a link down below for you to check it out. And granulated, that's the word. So see how this gray is granulated? That's what I imagined lunar blue to be. A little more granulated, like a little more speckled kind of a look. All right, so I'll put a link below to this. And so if you're in the market for something, a new palette, or you want to try something, a different brand, this Artistro palette is pretty decent. And yeah, and I'll be working with this over in the Creative Art Village, which is our online art community that we do a lot of different watercolors and acrylics and mixed media and all sorts of fun stuff in there. So I'll also put a link to that below in case you want to check that out. And that's just a monthly membership that is full of fun. All right, so have a great rest of your day. Visit me on glimmerbug.com. I will be putting up a blog post about this as well. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.